the place will need to really take myself away from this beauty and do my work, because this is not the first time we're holding this briefing on the sidelines of this forum, but you can definitely see for yourself the way the forum is going, what kind of is taking place in this city. And so it seems to me this is a very good tradition to come here regularly and witness for ourselves the way everything is evolving and changing. The motto of the current Eastern Economic Forum is something that you know, the Far East 2030. We shall unite our efforts, creating opportunities, and I believe this is an absolutely precise definition in terms of the regional expectations and global trends, because in the current geopolitical environment, the significance of the links between the Far Eastern regions and their involvement in the global Asia-Pacific region has grown. They have abundant natural resources, well-developed logistics, which pose as an important factors to further grow perspectives in interregional cooperation. And so holding of the annual Far Eastern Economic Forum broadens the field of opportunities to access new mutually beneficial agreements with the partners in Asia-Pacific, deepening the cooperation with them in priority areas. But this is not only certain narrow areas, this is a grand-scale collaboration. Why the Far Eastern regions? We call them the Far Eastern and foreign trade partners, amongst which the People's Republic of China remains a leading one. Today, this year, we celebrate 75th anniversary of establishment of the diplomatic relations between our countries. Interregional cross-border relations are gaining significance in the Chinese-Russian relationships and in a comprehensive partnership and strategic cooperation. Active stance by both countries towards the implementation of the mutually beneficial projects in the trade, economic, investment, educational sectors was something that specifically was acknowledged by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, in the course of the 42nd session of the heads of the regions of Russia under the auspices of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, which took place in April this year. The Russian regions demonstrated a strong interest towards participating in such events as the third forum of the high-level One Belt, One Way in Beijing in October last year in 2023, the 32nd Harbin International Fair in Harbin in July 2023, the 6th Chinese Import Fair, which took place in Shanghai in November 2023, also the first festival and fair of the Russian goods made in Russia in Shenyang in January 2024. These events created a strong impetus towards the development of the interregional cooperation. We also note an advancing development of the links between the Far Eastern regions in Russia with Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, which was something that during the high-level meeting was mentioned, also with India and Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, and other Asia-Pacific countries. Amongst the Far Eastern federal regions, an acknowledged leader in the area of interregional and foreign economic cooperation, Primorskaya remains as such. Its foreign trade turnover, following the results of last year, accounted for $13.2 billion. Also, international activity is being grown by other regions in this area. Kamchatka, Sakhalin region, a notable role being played in deepening the interregional and foreign economic cooperation by the representations of the foreign ministry offices in the far eastern regions of this country, which are responsible for the coordination of activities as well as interaction in different areas externally. I received many questions with respect to the events which are taking place under the auspices of our office in the sidelines of this forum. Just in case, I will share it again with you because we produced these announcements, but nevertheless, let me do it again. On the sidelines, on the 9th Eastern Economic Forum, there will take place a series of meetings which are being organized with the assistance of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, and specifically the Department of Press and Media. And I invite everybody to attend because these are open events on September 5th at 12:30 in Building D, Level 6, Conference Room number 18, as a round-table format. Our country is also part of it. In the course of the roundtable of the young diplomats between the Russian and the Chinese youth diplomats on the topic of the cooperation, the representatives of the diplomatic organizations held a discussion about the peculiarities of the national HR training for then being hired into the foreign affairs authorities. Also, the members of the dialogue hold meetings with the heads of the Far Eastern regions, Sakhalin, Kamchatka, and naturally the city of Vladivostok. The agenda, or rather, the agenda includes also exchanging the excellence practices in terms of raising the youth in for the social, educational, and cultural projects. And the last day of this dialogue will take place, the official ceremony of accepting the new members into the International Young Diplomat Association. I shall remind us again, the association was set up following the initiative of the Council of the Young Diplomats in 2017. So, as you can note, it has its own history. So, as of today, the structure has more than 150 participants. Now, let's go over to the current political agenda. What we are seeing is the way the events in Ukraine are evolving, I should say, in the area of the public governance. I would have said it in the older days, but considering the fact that the statehood of Ukraine is really no longer there, so it's difficult to call it a statehood. Let's call it a certain political construct. We will definitely revisit it because I know that you have questions, but right now I would like to cover the dimensions that, so to speak, we traditionally touch upon in our briefings. First of all, I would like to talk about the attempts by the Kiev regime to suspend restrictions on striking deep into the Russian territory. As you know, the Kiev regime and its Western handlers continue to go crazy, trying to chase after exacting on us, as they have formulated, an infamous strategic defeat against a continuously worsening situation for the Ukrainian army at the front line. The Kiev regime is currently after promoting finally new formula of a plan. They have conscience enough to describe it as a plan of victory. If I were them, I would word it closer to reality, because this is a new disaster plan for them. They continue begging the West in order to suspend restrictions on striking our country with long-range weaponry. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine, for security, neither the regional nor the global one, and they do everything. They don't stop at nothing in order to bring the whole world to another escalation of the terrorist activity by their own neo-Nazis. And we already see the way the West is directly involved in the conflict in Ukraine, because the collective West is actually the main instigator of the military aggression by the Kiev regime, and more brazenly demonstrate its direct involvement as an interested party in it. Whereas some time ago we heard various assurances that their main purpose, exceptionally, is the support of the Kiev regime on the path towards democracy, and they support the Kiev regime exclusively in helping them to fight for their own independence and to ensure their own security. So currently the Western cause in their announcement has become so open that they demonstrate that they themselves have become a direct threat. The NATO General Secretary, Stoltenberg, speaking to the German media, which took place on August 31st, completely supported the Zelensky-Kiev brazen venture campaign into Kursk, supporting the so-called Ukrainian president's statement, because that's the only way we can describe him. So he solidarized with the Ukrainian president's argument in creating in the Russian border area a certain buffer zone.
I don't quite understand what they mean by buffer zone. Probably the graveyard for the Ukrainians who will be killed in battle. But I can see brazen cynicism of citizens. Perhaps this is what they mean by the so-called buffer zone. The buffer zone which will be covered with the bodies of dead Ukrainians. What is this buffer zone they are talking about in the border districts? What are they talking about? You have to talk about it openly, and you have to follow the logic of this discussion. And so should Stoltenberg and the others. They should openly tell Ukrainians, the citizens of Ukraine, whom they actually have thrown into a battle. Let them explain what they mean by this so-called buffer zone. By the way, there is a illicit ground that has been created for the right of the so-called self-defense, which doesn't end at the border of the Ukraine. What about the right of Donbass and other Russian regions which are under strike of the Nazi Ukrainian regime? The rules do not apply to these regions. What's wrong with them? Is there something wrong with their knowledge of geography, or their approach to the system? At the informal meeting of the EU ministers previously attended by Kulebov and attended by Kulebov this time. I cannot say what it was about, but in Brussels, Borrell mentioned that, and I would like to quote him. He talked about the strategic achievements of the Ukrainian regime, which were demonstrated in the attacks on Kursk. Well, these are the quotations from the Third Reich as it is. Take it or leave it. This is the way they were thanked for their attacks on the countries of the world. So this was what was quoted by the representatives of the Western countries and NATO countries when they were talking about the coups in different countries, such as Afghanistan, which they left, by the way. So he also was mentioning the attacks on Russia and the central parts of Russia. Well, I must say that in accordance with the soon-to-leave guard of the so-called Garden of Eden, Borrell, he says that Europe should employ the armament to its full capacity in Russia and the Ukrainian war. Well, I'm not even mentioning about Blinken and others who motivated the Ukrainian regime, saying that they were fully answering the demands for the so-called beautiful future of the Ukraine. So where are the people now? Why are they calling people to rise? Why aren't they talking about the rights of the Ukrainian citizens? They're only talking about the so-called Western narrative, the Western narrative which poses its aim as a strategic attack on Russia. No other ideas. The crazy idea about terrorist attacks on Russia were supported by this rampage and orgy of ministers from Western countries and the Baltic states. They trying to gain score before the Western countries to simply gain means and finance which is channeled to them by foreign countries and Western countries. You see, it has to be drawn to attention that they are losing ground, they are losing touch with reality, and the fact that the escalation of this conflict is becoming dangerous to themselves, not only Ukrainian citizens whom they have already discarded, but let them think about themselves at least. Well, we have to draw the line, and in case of such aggressive regime steps, Kiev regime steps, there will be a concrete and direct response from Russia. Now, as to the crimes of the Ukrainian regime, which is continuing to attack the peaceful population of Russia, and these are acts of terrorism, extremism. On the 28th of August in Zaporozhye Oblast, a drone was fired and a child died. 4 people were wounded. On the 25th of August, 25 drones attacked a hospital. On the 29th of August, one soldier of the Russian army talked about the shelling and firing against 12 children in the Kursk district. They were killed, fired in the back. Do you remember how the Western countries were laughing about the liberal ideas of the boy who was killed? True. How many children have already been killed and wounded? Little boys and little girls. Mercifully crucified. They were simply crucified. So those who were laughing before, don't they want to pay attention to that and see what it has all come to? The facts, tragedy that is unfolding before our eyes is the value of this pseudo-humanist demagogy and their attempts to provide for the development of the so-called democracy. Children are dying, but nobody cares about children in these Western countries. They are worried about the abstract children who were, as they claim, were stolen from Ukraine. Some abstract children who need to receive help, whose rights have to be protected. They have to receive humanitarian aid. As to the real live children who were crucified, they have been completely forgotten about. So, you know, this is like a fairy tale of Andersen. You remember the story about the nightingale, where the princess discarded the real roses and the real nightingale by saying, well, they are real and I don't need them. This is very much like the position of the Western countries who disregard the dramatic and the tragic stories connected with children. This is what the West is saying. They're saying, we don't care about the real facts. This is what is unfolding before our eyes. And there is information in mass media from the Banderites, from the Banderites who have been killing peaceful population. And, approximately 10 people were killed who wanted to leave Sudzhansky region and Sudzha. A pregnant woman was killed when she tried made a futile attempt to evacuate the city. So, has anyone changed their avatar? Has anyone given the world to know the photographs about the people who were murdered in cold blood? Maybe somebody lit a candle in the memory of those who perished. Maybe, or could somebody have given a specific color to some building or a picture of people who have suffered, really suffered? No. This has not been done. More and more Ukrainian prisoners representing the Ukrainian army point out that such horrific actions were carried out under the direction of the Ukrainian army, that this is a part of the program. Well, nobody doubts that. This was pointed out by Poroshenko in the olden days when he said that people with their violated and destructed future. This was the picture he was drawing if you do not try to retain your identity, you will lose your identity. Well, actually, this was what Zelensky pointed out after after he became president, when he was standing on his knees and asking for forgiveness before the people who had been murdered under the Hitler regime, known that he would change things around. 5 people died from the drones produced by the Czech company Vampire. A lot of blocks of flats were destructed. The Russian politicians turned to the UN secretary in order to condemn these acts of violence. They will be persecuted in the end. The blood of Russian people will be is on the consciousness of the foreign Western regimes. And all this goes to prove that pumping the Banderites with arms should stop immediately. On 15 regions of Russia were attacked, and the anti-aircraft missile defense systems have been able to cross out these attacks on Russia. Thankfully, there were no victims, thanks to the efforts made by the Russian army. And now the most important point. Why are we now discussing these topics? Why are we talking about the 1st and the 2nd of December? Well, the 1st and the 2nd of December are the days that mark the beginning of the new school year. Children who go to school are becoming the victims of the Kiev regime, and this is an act of terrorism. It was mentioned in the North Caucasus that we are now dealing with the so-called fighters for democracy. They, in their time, attacked the schools in Beslan, and the theater in Dubrovka. You know, they didn't simply choose Dubrovka for some random reason. There was a particular reason for choosing this theater because it was attended by families with children. On the 3rd of September, a church was attacked in Belgorod. Drones dropped explosives on the church. And parishioners and the clergy were wounded. A lot of people died. So I'd like to once again repeat that this is on the conscience of the Western regimes, and they will be persecuted and prosecuted. And now let's go back to what we talk about continually, the Ukrainian Nazi who have been brought up on the previous history and a story of the Nazi, the Hitler Nazi. And the Lvov operation, the Red Army, has become the focal point of this regime. Well, a lot of people don't know the real history, but the 80th anniversary, which was or supposed to be marked on the 29th of August, when the same Banderites, the representatives of the Ukrainian army, were getting ready to attack the nursery schools of the same particular region, you know, the region where 80 years ago, grandfathers of the current school children risked their lives for the future generations. And the population of Lvov at the time of the fascist army were meeting Russian soldiers with tears of happiness and gratitude in their eyes. And by the way, they were freed not only from Hitler, not only from fascists, but even from the collaborationists of Ukrainians on the side of fascists who were very brutal. Currently in Kursk, we see practically the same attitude of the Ukrainian Nazi towards the population of these regions, towards the peaceful population. On the 1st of September, 80 years was marked from the beginning of the Second World War. This is another reason to remember the fact that one needs to take into account, one needs to learn the lessons of history, the lessons of the Second World War. Now, crime is always followed by punishment. Now, let's talk about punishment. On the 28th of August, by the decision of the Lefortovo court of Moscow, the Venezuelan, Colombian guerrillas, mercenaries were taken into custody. They were prosecuted, they were investigated, and under investigation, it was proven that they were members of the neo-Ukrainian battalion. And that day, there was a decision of the court against Latvian mercenaries who were present on the territory of the Ukraine and represented Ukrainian army. And there was a lot of fake information about the bloody are assigned to our military in Bucha, but there was no one who saw that happen in reality. And actually, practically every day, the there are stories appearing on illegal participation of representatives of foreign mass media on the territories in the Kursk and the Belgorod regions, especially journalists without a Russian visa and journalist visa without any accreditation who shouldn't be there at all.
Yet another similar propaganda opus of such a violator, Thomas Match, was published on the 24th of August at the internet portal Daily Beast, in which he translates a false Ukrainian narrative stating that Russia allegedly abandoned the land and people, and, you know, it also quotes the militants, which protect the idea of Belgorod, Bryansk, and Kursk being Ukrainian territories. You know, I would like to say here and now that with all the monstrosity of what has been said, it's probably not a bad thing that such publications appear, because we immediately take decisions in these cases. Otherwise, it would be more difficult for us. You know, we see who and who was where, you know, and who he or she talked to. So, you know, we are able to operate, to work on it. So the illegal presence of the media reporters in those territories is a criminally punishable offense. And the appearance of Nazi headhunters from the Ukrainian forces aggravates this crime. The West actually continues to provide the military equipment and weapons to the Ukrainian regime, to the Kiev regime, and keeps silent about the series of crimes committed against the sacred things for the West, like human rights or freedom of expression. For instance, in the West, you can hear nobody speak about Zelensky's new law on the destruction of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is aimed, in fact, against the canonic orthodoxy. And this is the infringement on the rights of the people. It doesn't seem to be bothering anyone in the Western Europe, in Canada, or the United States, and there's double standards, or the absence of those standards at all. And, you know, the same can be said about the clergy in the West, for instance. The National Review actually noted that the repressive actions against the Ukrainian Orthodox Church will damage not only the image of Ukraine, but also will split the Ukrainian society. I can say that it will not happen in the future. The society in Ukraine is already split. It just has been fixed in the legislation of the country. The American Conservative magazine analyzed the facts and shows that the systematic violations of the right of the Orthodox pastor on the part of the Kiev authorities started back in 2018, not in 2022. Well, at least something. You know, they started noticing that back in 2018. Then the mongering against the clergy of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is underlined in this publication as well. And despite everything, Washington does not notice what is happening there. Okay. If Washington was not involved at all, and could, well, in that case, it could say that it's, well, they can do anything. They are for all the good against all the bad, you know, and it's up to the people to decide what they do. So there must be, you know, non-government institutions that should be engaged in the protection of these rights. But the White House, exactly the White House, is completely focused and professionally focused on this topic, you know, issuing certain reports issued by the government and government-financed institutions which are part of the government apparatus in the United States, which are designed to protect the religious rights and freedoms. And here we see, you know, an unprecedented situation which is out of the scope of their view. And that is happening despite of what the journalists say and the United Nations say. And the United Nations starts registering that too. We, on our side, also published a lot of materials that were pertaining to the attacks on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and what was happening to the clergy there. And nothing out of that report was put to doubt, because we had names, we had plaintiffs, we had all the specific facts. And this arrogance on the part of Washington demonstrated towards the Kiev regime actually supports Zelensky regime in his doings. This Ukro-Nazi ideology actually speaks, well, says that the majority of the Ukrainian people are supporting the decisions made by Zelensky as regards the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It's a dictatorship that we currently see in Ukraine. So, you know, the people, if they fail to obey to the Kiev regime, they risk being imprisoned. And although they know it exactly, and they know it for sure, they just come out into the streets and they try to protect the holy places and the holy ideas that they believe to be untouchable. So everything that is said by Zelensky and his regime about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is an example of wishful thinking. You know, they are trying to say something that is not happening, because what has been done and is being done may lead to open hostilities. Not at the ideological level only, or level, if you please, but it may lead to a real civil, civil riots. Going over to the situation in Moldavia, we continue to follow the events in Moldavia, and Moldavia follows the prescribed by the anti-Russian course prescribed by the West. On the 31st of August, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic, Paphos, the minister, actually said that Russia was sponsoring protests in Moldavia, and this actually is a cause for a laugh. It's a laughing stock. He actually said that the Russia is responsible for increasing the bills for household services by 500%. It's very, and the head of the Moldavian diplomacy actually tried to side with the whatever the Kiev regime is doing in the Kursk region. He actually said that they were providing security of who, do you think? In the past it was the European Union. Now they are protecting Moldova as well. So, and according to Paphos, they are very successful in doing that, especially in Kursk. from the point of view of the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Moldova, that's what's going on. And he decided to report that to the citizens of the country. And I think it's just absolutely insane, because they are living in this fantasy. On the backdrop of these irresponsible statements made by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Moldova, we should pay attention to a new round of hostile propaganda by Moldova and Ukraine, who actually call on getting rid of the Russian military presence in the region. Is it by pure chance that the Russian military are present there? Maybe Sandos regime or somebody in the Sandos regime will take the pain of rereading the history of their own country, and maybe they will come to remembering what happened a couple of decades ago in that country. And then again, I would like to warn from such adventures. Initiatives of the sort may be put forward only by the enemies of the Moldova state that would like to destruct it as soon as possible. I would like to remind you that there are more than 200 citizens residing in Pridnestrovia and Transnistria, and any infringement on their rights will be taken as an attack against the Russian Federation. So it's just a cheap sale of their own citizens and culture, because well, they actually rewrote their own language, the Moldavian language, into Romanian, and they are in the process of re-registering the Moldovan people into Romanian people. So one has to find some new words and wordings. I don't even remember if anything of the sort has happened in the history. And you know all too well examples of how a nation was placed at a step down, blamed for certain historical events, discriminated, but so that the whole nation would be at the same time, the human rights are used as a banner, the people of certain ethnicity are blamed and changed. Even the ethnicity is changed, which is properly registered in the documents. When these gas transportation system network was given to the Bucharest control, there's a port that actually provides to Moldova the exit to the access to the sea. The energy, the electricity grid, for instance, is going to be transferred to Romania as well. That only means that all the ways available now are used by the regime to illegitimately transfer the country to some other jurisdiction, and which is in violation of the international law or any other legal principles. And that's when all the strategic assets are transferred to Romania, these Romanian citizens who are now ruling Moldova are trying to destroy the country. A few decades ago, the same thing, the same goal was to be achieved by different methods only. So they are going to decide the so-called the issue of the Russian Orthodox Church in Moldova. However, the overwhelming majority have protected the church, although before the election in 2020, the current president said that there will be no attacks against the Russian language, or the rights will be protected, and so on and so forth. So, you know, all these statements, although made by the president, should be looked at as statements that may be corrected and may be violated. In May 2023, Sandu actually called as she called it, retranslator of the Russian propaganda. The Moldovan Orthodox Church was referred to as such. Maybe it's time for her to understand that Russia is actually protecting traditional values and promoting traditional values. Maybe something will click in her brain. Well, if she has anything there. Well, it's not the Moldovan Orthodox Church that translates the Russian Orthodox Church's values. It's Russia which is promoting the traditional values. So Moldova is sticking to the anti-Russian course. Moldovans wouldn't like to fall victim to somebody else's geopolitical game, which is aimed not against Russia, for instance, but against themselves. They would like to maintain the historical ties with our country, and this actually earns full respect. So speaking about the realities, there was a lot of questions based on the materials that were published by the German media or U.S. media referring to German sources. As regards the terrorist attacks on pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, over 2 years now since the terrorist attack, Russia has been openly speaking about the act of bombing terrorism, the necessity of carrying out an open investigation under the aegis of the United Nations and its Secretary General, but this proposal was blocked by the West, namely by the United States. And more than one time, Russia actually applied to the German authorities, asking them to for an opportunity to participate in the investigation. And I would like to remind you that the prosecutor's office of Germany is carrying out an investigation, and we wanted them to share the information because we are carrying out our investigation too. So all the questions asked by the Russian party remained unanswered, and none of the requests that we sent was met by the German party. So it is characterized as, you know, as something developing in the right direction. So from their point of view, everything goes according to plan. However, no concrete results have been provided. I would like to remind you about the pace. When they wanted to blame Russia of something, they easily found some justifications and facts. You know, it took them 2 days or a couple of weeks maybe. How many days have been they investigating? It's not days, it's 2 years already. And to a zero effect. You know, the investigation which was carried out in Poland, within the framework of this investigation, they tried to arrest one of the perpetrators. And Donald Tusk recently stated that, look, that's a quotation. Those who are concerned about the progress of investigation on the Nord Streams have to keep their mouths shut. How do you like that? I mean, maybe they should use NATO or the EU as an audience or first, and then create a list of investigations within these organizations that should be carried out in accordance with the internal law or international law, and another list of those investigations that should not be focused on and don't even require any attention at all. So they should create some kind of a table so that we understand which is which, whether there will be a fair trial, fair, or at least, those minute facts of investigation on the Nord Streams, for instance, then it would all be understandable. They make statements which actually describe the picture, but we are trying to fish out and try to sieve the details from the mass media that we are receiving, from the journalists who are engaged in these investigations, from bloggers who actually try to pick very small pieces in order to build this puzzle. But there are some officials in Germany who are responsible for responding to the questions. They actually arrange a number of round tables and conferences, and there's a lot of platforms. A lot of money has been spent, and they provided a lot of platforms for the Russian opposition, the so-called Russian opposition, who are rather, paid horses or strike breakers. They could actually stop the. A very similar thing happened as regards the Skripal case. Over these last few years, somehow they had to, because they were overwhelmed with questions, and the actual investigators, British investigators from Scotland Yard, did not have anything to do with the intrigues that were arranged by the British special services, which were carrying out an investigation.
The inefficiency, like I described it, is there for everybody to see, and it's impossible not to ask oneself a question. To what extent the mentioned by the German authorities there used to be questions visit this quote so as to try to understand what was meant by it. Only in this case, Finland, as was said by the Prime Minister of Finland, will be able to come back to observe its international obligations in compliance with the Russian-Finnish intergovernmental agreement on the cross-border points through the government border back in 1994 concluded, and the Russian-Finnish agreement about the Russian-Finnish border and the process of the regulation of the incidents in 1964. As it seems, since November 2023 in Helsinki, the Helsinki authorities either demonstrate some lack of understanding about how to interpret and understand what the border relations should be, because the lack of understanding by the Finnish authorities what their ultimate goals should be achieved, because possibly this is about the intentional provocations against Russia. Let me remind you how it all happened, because originally the Finnish side took a decision to close the border checkpoints And that decision contradicts the concluding OECD Act, whereby they took an obligation to promote exchange between the cross-border dwellers. And so they brazenly stated that Russia intentionally acted to organize illegal migration flows towards Finland. After that, once they, I guess, decided to look for some sort of a legal cover, the Finnish authorities introduced changes into the immigration legislation in their country which enable the border police to expel those who come and ask for asylum, despite the fact that, according to the international law, their petitions should be considered in due time and in due process. So, as you see, democracy completely ends once someone is trying to gain some sort of a benefit. So ultimately now, it is all being done to open the border. But, as it turned out, it was not enough, because currently the head of the Finnish Cabinet of Ministers can demand from the Russian border police certain guarantees not to allow, but essentially the filtration of those who are on the Russian side on the legal basis for the people who wish to leave the Russian territory in any direction of their choice. Let me simply remind you that, according to Part 2 of Article 27 of the Constitution of Russia, any person can freely travel outside of the territory of Russia. It is laughable that Finland is currently officially a member of the North Atlantic community of white swans who eschew the freedom of thought and pluralism, because they are continuously accusing us of having no freedom, no anything. So what one is to do about the fact that Finland, specifically in this case, violates all of the imaginable principles that provide for the freedom of movement and mobility for human beings. So this particular provision in our constitution specifically is based upon the international norm. Maybe Helsinki doesn't knows about it, but it's written into Part 2 of Article 13, Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, and Point 2 of Article 2 of the International Pact about the civil and political right, dating back to 1966. You understand? The rights of the human beings, democracy and freedom must not remain exclusively a declarative principle. These should become applied kind of principle. They need to be implemented and brought into practice. So with this in mind, one would like to remind sometime in the past friendly that concern the Finnish side, and you can read about it in the previous statements by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. But what we are stating is that Helsinki continues, apparently, to run this course because they're not really interested in the practical solution, which is the result of the Finnish activities, which negatively impacts the everyday life of the dozens of thousands of people, and they continue politicking, trying not to be guided by the common sense and civil benefit topic. And so, to extend this particular topic further, I mean, within the context of the Ukrainian issue, a very important announcement on September 10th and 12th in Russia, in Moscow, there will be an International Anti-Fascist Forum 2024 dedicated to the International Day of Memory Fascism. Every day we're saying that neo-Nazism is developing. Every day we are quoting facts, not just over the 1 or 2 years, but every day. Yes, first we were talking about trends, later we started saying that it has become a certain routine thing for many countries and for many occasions on the planet. Now, 79 years after the victory of the Soviet Union in the World War II, again humanity is confronted by fascism and Nazism. In the 21st century, in the extension of the brown plague, an aggressive imperialism headed by US and NATO is there, which claim that the rights belong only and exclusively to the golden billion, declaring its hate towards those who they describe as the jungle people, Untermenschen. Some even mentioned the phrase of biological waste, you name it. So to prevent the world from the real danger of fascism that declares its presence every day in different ways, this is one of the top priorities of the International Anti-Fascist Forum, and its motto is, we remember the past, we think about the future. So there's going to be a report made available by the organizing committee about the way fascism manifests itself in different countries, also about the methods of effective combating against it. There will be issues of classifying the history of the World War II, providing material and financial aid to the victims of fascism, patriotic raising of the new generation, many other things. The agenda of the forum also for the international video conference with direct inclusion into the debate of foreign representatives from Austria, Armenia, Belarus, Armenia, Bulgaria, Israel, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Polish, Slovenia, United States, Uzbekistan, France, Estonia, and so on. The forum participants will lay wreaths to the Tragedy of People Memorial in Moscow. The heads of the veteran organizations will be making presentations, as well as the representatives of the Russian parliament, religious conventions, diplomatic representatives of foreign countries in Russia, the heroes of the Soviet Union and Russia, and many others. The words of greeting will be read out by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei. Another date, a very important one, September 8th, which is when we will celebrate the International Day of the Solidarity of the Journalism, which was started in 1958 as decided by the 4th Congress of the International Organization of Journalists in memory of the Czech correspondent Julius Fučík, which was murdered by Hitlerites, to remind that the duty of the contemporary journalist to honestly deliver to the public the true picture of what is happening, to be in the hot spot of the contemporary conflicts, and to do objective coverage of what is happening. A very dangerous, very noble profession when following various ethical norms and in a law-abiding way. That principle created a very closely knit international brotherhood, something that is currently undergoes the test of times, because there's no traditional journalism that we used to think was an ordinary something, because that is exactly what we heard the Westerners talk about when they were pushing forward this notion of the new media, trying to make bloggers equal to mass media, and attempting to substitute traditional media with social networks. Regrettably, the times when the solidarity between the journalists didn't know any borders or ideological preferences. Alas, I'm not trying to say that it is now the matter of the past, but currently they seem like they're trying to disband themselves, because what we note is this stark emptiness in the place where there should be petitions, statements, declarations. When we talk about the terrorist attacks against the Russian reporters, not only about the Russian reporters, but about the one which died because of the Kiev regime actions. Just imagine the number of people who lost their lives, the number of people who were injured, who were subjected to tortures or taken hostage. Nothing, not a single line of text, not a single line of compassion, neither from the part of the professional community, I mean in the international one, but from the point of view of the core entities, intergovernmental ones at the same time. So in the West, where the true independent journalism, almost in front of our eyes, is becoming extinct and turns itself into an obedient tool of the aggressive propaganda, the above mentioned notions become an empty sound. very loyal, I mean, just abandoned notions of mutual support, solidarity. Solidarity is when you're being hit by a stick in order to make you do what somebody else want. You know, NATO countries, when they vote, and what is it that they're voting for, they find out they have been distributed the text of the resolutions that they have previously voted for. And this is solidarity. No, solidarity is something that comes from your heart, from your mind, from the code of honor, for example. And international journalism was exactly the structure that has been in the vanguard of such a solidarity. Is there anything left of it right now? Practical norm right now, when the mainstream Western reporters and trade unions are active participants in persecuting their colleagues. In Germany, of course, the kind of the active persecution that was initiated, headed by that really insane person, considering what he's saying. Just imagine the kind of hate campaign that they launched against the Russian media. That is horrific. And they became the instigators. I mean, the Germans themselves were not ready, were not intending, but somehow to segregate Russian reporters. They found it interesting to read somebody else's point of view, and they were making up their own mind what they liked, what they didn't, what was fake, what was not. They would have sorted it out, but all of a sudden the Union of German Journalism came up and decided for everyone what is true, what is not. Recently, it was difficult to imagine that they would be sickening the local authorities against the media representative writing in different languages. Once again, the German Union of Journalism, exactly this kind of a structure, which instead of protecting and safeguarding the reporters and journalists, not only specific people, but even the principles upon which journalism is based, are effectively a provocateur which calls upon the German authorities. Of course, this is just a conducted drama, you know, calling upon the German authorities with a request to quench upon the Russian non-colleagues, the way they put it. Reputable media in the past, I mean, were really worried about the fact that certain Russophobic information is going to be dispersed by a hate campaign against the Russian reporters. It was impossible to imagine in the past. Just remember, over the past 30 years, the Westerners, even on the brink of meddling with our internal affairs, would be watching over the life of the Russian reporters, demanding that the Russian government should undertake steps to investigate, to protect the reporters from Russia. Just in a second, just in no time, they flipped. And everybody was able to see their true face. Just within a second, the Russian needed protection were transformed by the West into those who should be persecuted, segregated, and subjected to all kind of ostracism. But effectively, in the foundation of it, if we talk about the Western journalistic trade union and specific people, the senior editors, who are the people behind this hate campaign against the Russian colleagues, that include also the fear of competition or the inability to withstand this competition. Quite clearly, when Russia Today started broadcasting in the German language, and many amongst the German audience, which includes not only Germany but Austria and other territories, many really felt that a fresh breeze of air started coming in as an alternative, as a possibility to have a comparison and maybe, you know, make a choice in favor of their traditional media, but maybe subscribe to an additional source of information. But immediately, the statistics started appearing, I mean, of the people being interested in the Russian media, presentations that were broadcasting in German, that it has become overnight a challenge, a threat to the Russian reporters who decided to act as I described, appeal to the German authorities for them to undertake measures against the Russian reporters, and particularly sending is the conducted, artificially conducted, concocted, fabricated actions to keep quiet about assassination attempts at the Russian reporters who are trying to deliver not only an alternative point of view, but also from the hotbeds of events, a stubborn ignoring of the fact that behind all such things there is the Kiev regime. They don't want to see it. They don't want to notice it. But again, appealing to the Western media, you are the colleagues, the physicians and doctors. They take the oath of Hippocrates. And the journalists also have their code of ethics. Where has it all gone? A collective blindness that, as a malady, has struck Western reporters. There are exceptions. Moreover, there are those who are gaining their eyesight back, but there are very few of them.
But most of them, unfortunately, continue to do what they were doing. And they're saying that what you see, you have to understand that we need to pay for our insurance.
Мы не такие смелые, как вы. Мы не готовы. Ну, хорошо. Вот сейчас они мерятся жестокостью в отношении российских журналистов. Они мерятся с человеконенавистничеством в принципе. Они мерятся с беззаконием. Они забывают, что это не просто примирительная тактика. А это тактика соучастия. Ситуация с плюрализмом СМИ, свободой доступа к информации продолжает деградировать во многих так называемых продвинутых демократиях, нигде не встречая достойного отпора со стороны профессионалов западной медиасферы. Что касается Прибалтики, там активно продолжаются гонения на неугодных журналистов, которые посмели усомниться в правильности проводимой властями политики, которые посмели высказать свою точку зрения. По проторенному руссофобскому пути прибалтийских государств следует режим Санду, о чем я уже сказала. Я даже
was a Nazi. And he was the representative of not simply the German elite, but the leading elite. Now, anti-Russian prejudice and Russophobia is a particular notion that is aimed against Russian people, against the nation, against culture, and so listen to Scholz and other experts who are saying that it was Russia who stopped providing gas for Germany. But this is not called radicalism for some reason. So you have to see where particular sources of information are simply labeled as radical and where this radicalism is really present and omnipresent. This is what democracy is for. Different segments of society have to have the right to provide their views on different aspects. But unfortunately, the Germans lack this now, and they are refused these rights. You ask me, why are they doing this? It's not logical, is it? The Germans are leading the government. They are at the head of the government. They are taking the decisions on stopping the provision of gas supplies to Germany. But why? It's just on they are governing the country just on paper. They are mediators, and the views of the United States. They were financed by the United States, and this is the answer, and this is the reason for such behavior. They were supported on the level of mass media and information creation just in order to be conducive for this particular logic. We all know different examples on talking about patriotism, where unfortunately the more you talk about it, the more people go the other way or look the other way. РИА Новости, Kristina Labradrig. We have one question. Vladimir Zelensky asked Narendra Modi in India to organize a conference in India on the regulating of peace processes between Russia and Ukraine. Is there any reaction from Delhi on this proposal? Well, I think, I think that Zelensky lacks understanding of international situation and has no understanding of the position of India in this question. We do, and we highly value the decision of Narendra Modi to become conducive to the peaceful developments and to organizing talks between our two countries and contributing to the peace processes, and we value it very highly. What is the position of India and the government of India? I suppose this is something Zelensky does not understand at all, but the essence of this political views is the fact that talks have to be organized under the decision of both parties, both interested parties and sides to the conflict. And I understand why the Ukrainian side poses questions in such a way. Actually, they do not see the underlying side of the decision of India. Maria Vladimirovna, I'm representing Russia today. How can you comment on the fact that Armenia has frozen its participation in of CD, and how will the organization be coordinated? Well, I've been actually studying the Armenian side particular statements. And well, actually, there have been different statements that have been made. One is that CSTO has left or the territory of Armenia, or that Armenia has ceased to be the member of CSTO. Well, you have to bear the responsibility of your statements. That is very important. We have been commenting on this de jure. Armenia is a member of CSTO, and the government of Armenia is currently aiming at waving from the line of work of CSTO. This, of course, will influence the relationship between our countries and will have a serious impact on the collective security and security of Armenia. I think that the representatives of the Armenian government shouldn't play with words and such notions. Yes, thank you. Hello. The comment of UN representatives stating that Paris has led to the death of 160 people and 169 people wounded in a conflict in New Caledonia. Are you talking about the Council on the Rights of People, on the indigenous, the rights of indigenous people, the rights for meetings, for the racism agenda? Well, we actually side with particular aspects of the experts' point of view. What is happening in New Caledonia has drawn our attention. We're paying special attention. The situation was provoked. We understand that, provoked by those who were supposed to be responsible for the future of this new territory, I'd like to remind you that in May of this year, the archipelago was burning with meetings of indigenous people who think that this was a breach of their right to self-determination, and Paris has demonstrated the violation of the rights of people for conducting meetings on their own territories. And yes, there were victims. We pointed out that the methods used by French authorities are becoming violent, and we are pointing out that the international community is stating that the process of decolonialization has not reached its end. It's continuing, despite the fact that de facto and de jure a lot of nations have received their independence and sovereignty. But in reality, looking at it from an analytical point of view, stating the freedom of this territory is a bit early in the day, is rather early in the day, and the population of these countries are still fighting for the status of independence. The document document on decolonialization states that this is a not self-governing structure, not a self-governing territory. Well, these documents have to be brought to light, they have to be discussed, and in particular cases, certain investigation has to be concluded. We need general standards. Take a look at how manic Paris has become in assessing elections in different countries. But this particular territory, where they are responsible for the events and they are not ready to answer and they're not ready to pay for the consequences of what for their actions on this particular territory. So the French authorities are politically repressing the people of these territories, and they have resorted to political repressions. More than 2,500 people have been detained in these meetings. It's not a multi-billion country. The population is rather small, and 2,500 people have been detained. We understand what is happening there, so we hope that the international community will be able to adequately assess the situation.
The problem, such people should be deprived of the right to express the opinion of other people, you know, before they actually bring an order at home or in the territories for which they are responsible. Why do you think they have the right to try and teach others how to behave? Tatiana Shevchuk, TGTN Ruski, CGTN Ruski channel. 2 years ago, it was stated that Russia was pivoting to the east, and the key partner was China was called the key partner. How, over this time, do you think they qualitatively changed the structure? Well, I wouldn't like you, please, I ask you not to use the terminology based on pivoting or turns or pivots. You know, the country has borders in the north, in the south, in the east, in the west, and we are developing interaction with all our neighboring countries. Not only the neighboring countries, of course, but our geography and our history means that we have to develop our relations on all the sides. If we are talking about the full-scale relations, and sometimes it so happens that they discontinue to be full-size or full-scale, and irrespective of us and our efforts, we will continue to develop those areas which are of proven efficiency. That doesn't mean, however, that we will not continue our relations with economic operators, for instance, or regimes, or we see a direct benefit, you know, in interacting with the people living in the conditions of such regimes. As regards China, over the more than 10 years, 15 years, we see that China is taking the first position among the partners of Russia. So a large part of the territory of Russia is in Asia, and we are a Eurasian country. I still remember the debates, TV debates, and back in 1990s, and on the pages of press, the question was asked whether Russia should choose its own way, should follow a Eurasian path, or whether it's east-oriented or west-oriented. The life itself has shown the answers to these questions, you know, because to those especially who said that Eurasia a way to Russia to follow. So, you know, the current situation actually showed what Eurasia, Eurasian development, Eurasian cooperation is. And this is an evident reality. Therefore, since we are to a large extent an Asian country, and we are located on the Asian continent, we also draw our conclusions as regards our future development. In addition, we have a very long borderline with China, so this is a prerequisite for the vector of our policy. And as regards the plans for future arrangement of they are a result of systematic and systematic work that aimed at the future. And there are historical ties as well, and there's a look forward, a look into the future. There are certain geopolitical changes taking place and have taken place, and that's another reality. You know, I think, well, when Obama said that well, he said that it was in tatters, speaking about the Russian economy, but, you know, the chains, the supply chains have been tattered. Indeed, at the moment, not the economy, though, but we are reestablishing these connections, these ties in the region where we are at the moment with you today. And there are protectionism, like also an illegitimate, as illegitimate as the sanctions that we have referred to. And when the people are trying to burn bridges, we are trying to build or rebuild bridges. Just remember that when back in 2022, 2 trans-border bridges were commissioned across the Amur River. So, you know, we are aimed at a cooperation that would be beneficial for both countries and the world in general. Can we let some of the people who are online with us, is the international life with us, give an opportunity to ask a question? Mayradin Almadin, after the international life, in continuation of this French topic, Emmanuel Macron recently, before his visit to Belgrade, published an article in Srpska Politika newspaper. He said that, you know, that there is a single task for the European countries to maintain the single front against Russia. How do you assess that? I think nothing new or clever was said by Macron. On the other hand, I have a question to this Serbian newspaper. Did they have any kind of remorse, you know, when these Russophobic words were published? I'm for the freedom of speech, and I'm for a fair play in discussing things, you know, and I'm for the fair reaction to certain phenomena and events that are happening in the public space. But here we are talking about some obvious things. There are some nationalistic ideas expressed in that statement. he was referring to the fact that, well, the Serbs, based on their own history, not to use the word their own skin, you know, so that it was not interpreted as a lack of respect. You know, the Serbs, based on their own history, know exactly what it means when the North Atlantic Treaty Organization builds its policy that is targeted against one nation. How can one publish something like that, you know? Maybe a footnote or a comment that would be added to the article. We hear a lot of crazy things, insane things on the part of the Western leaders, and I think they just came to an agreement, and it's a bright example of this insanity, because they agreed that there's no male or female, you know, they are talking about tens or dozens of genders, and they agreed that they should honor the Nazis, as it happened in the Canadian Parliament, for instance. And we hear a lot of insane things, you know, some unjustified information or unproven information that is published and then withdrawn. There are some extravagant things. These things are not only those, but they are anti-historic, and they are nationalistic up to the extent of being Nazi. And I would really like the Serbian newspapers to believe, to remember about our mutual history and hopefully our mutual future. I remember how many times Russia has saved Serbs and Serbia. And it's not, you know, the long gone past. I'm talking about the newest history. I'm not talking only about the countering to what was being done back in the 90s in Serbia with NATO bombings, and I'm not only referring to our strict policies as to the unity of Serbia and splitting of Serbia by recognizing the quasi-state of Kosovo. I'm also referring to the colossal economic assistance that we have been providing to Serbia. And this assistance is not only based on mutually beneficial projects or infrastructural projects, but it is also based on taking into consideration the requests of Serbia and Serbian authorities and its economic operators. Direct requests, you know, and after that, the media are publishing calls on a crusade against Russia and creating a union of which Serbia must be a part of. But between the freedom of speech and humiliation, there's a distance. And between the freedom of speech and the Nazi statements, there's also a difference. Between the freedom of expression and fakes, there's a difference. And we should also always remember about that. On the 20th of December, and you actually touched upon the situation in that country, there will be the presidential election held, and there will be a referendum held on the EU joining for Moldova. I actually saw these fake information and these fake statements probably promoted by the Sandu regime. I would just like to remind you that in November 2020, when the presidential election took place in Russia, Moldovan president in Russia, 17 polling stations were open in different regions of Russia. There were no complaints on the part of Chisinau. There were no problems related to security or safety. And I would like to reiterate and underline again that Russia is not interested in restricting the number of polling stations, and we are ready to take the necessary measures in order to ensure security for at these polling stations, and we're not interested in influencing the opinion that will be expressed by the Moldovan citizens residing in Russia. So whenever the parliamentary elections or presidential elections are held abroad by other countries or by Russia, we always state that, you know, the Russian citizens living abroad can actually participate in the elections there, and we are ready on our part to provide any assistance for those citizens of other countries who would like to participate in their national elections. So I think that it is the situation is very understandable to to all the people. Moldova is trying to find any pretext in order to deprive their own citizens, the Moldovan citizens, who, from their standpoint, are not reliable from the point of view of the electoral results, to build certain barriers on their way to the election. The Moldavian diaspora is about 500,000 people. I mean, those Moldovans living in Russia. And if the regime, the Sandu regime, deprives them of the right to vote, that would be a step back from democracy and the violation of any democratic principles by the Sandu regime. And I would call it a massive violation of the human rights in Russia that should be qualified by the international community. I don't know whether Chisinau will proceed this way. I actually gave you an idea of how the Russian approaches are like, and I told you about our readiness to provide the necessary security, and there's no issue regarding security of the Moldovan citizens living in Russia. Almaydin, please. Once again, the NATO organization is preparing a large-scale training exercise in Finland with the participation of a large number of units. And in case of any conflicts, the terrorist organizations like ISIS and Nazis from Ukraine will be participating in those exercises. How will Russia respond to such scenario? Well, Europe is turning itself into a region of geopolitical confrontation, and there are parallel lines drawn to what happened back 80 or 90 years ago. We have said initial risks involved in Finland's joining NATO, and any exercises are definitely provocative, and these exercises in Finland create new threats to shipping routes and economic activity in the northern part of the country. Our military actually draw their own conclusions, and we have to fight back these threats. You know that in order to do that, warrants for international search were issued for a number of journalists and Gunko as well, Yaroslav Gunko. Well, you have a number of questions. Interpol is the largest organization in the world. It has demonstrated its efficiency many times, but the problem is the position of the Western countries. If they continue to activities of this organization, but try to use the law and regulations for the sake of their own ideology, then Interpol as an organization will lose its efficiency.
As is already happening with a lot of organizations in the West, where countries are deviating from international law and attempting to dominate. As far as Gunko is concerned, and at the current moment, after we have started our investigation and search, more than 20 countries have joined us in this particular action. Well, we were applauded on the one hand, we're being applauded on the other hand. Just listen to what the relatives of Gunko are saying. They have been wailing that this old man is inconvenienced in his old age. This is actually by people who adequately assess this, the situation would have been called just retribution for those who against people, and this would have been just. And unless such people are put into jail, of course, people will be condemning his acts and will be justified in their anger and rage against such criminals. Well, it would have been he would have been at peace with himself had he not been brought to light. But somebody decided to put him on the pedestal, and the example of this particular man should have highlighted the example of Zelensky and the image of Zelensky, but he fell off the pedestal and was justly accused of violation of law and his crimes. One has to preserve the organization. One has to preserve the mechanisms, the structure of such organizations, organizations which have always been efficient up till such incidents, organizations that have to be independent and not demonstrate the American difficulties. Hello, Maria Vladimirovna. Thus, Artyom Paphos, the Service of State Security in Sweden, has posted the threat of Russia for Sweden. How can you comment on such rhetoric? Well, it's a dichotomy. It's they were interested in sabotage then this is a representative of dichotomy. Yes, please. Спасибо.
Andrea Lucidi, BioBlue Italian TV channel. After what happened in Kursk, journalists that are still working in Russia.
Is it a question?
Yeah.
No, if Italian or other countries' correspondents got their accreditation and journalist visa legally, there is nothing they should worry about. They should do their job, even if we are not happy with the articles, even if we notice fakes or false in these articles. We're not trying to, how you mention it, punish or withdraw the accreditations.
Maybe my question was not clear. I asked it because right now in Russia there are some Italian journalists and maybe other foreign journalists anti-Russia that they are working, writing for foreign media, and they used anti-Russian language like Russian invasion against Ukraine, or they say that the Nazi presence in Ukraine is a fake, but they're still working.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why you're so surprised? We are for freedom of speech, even we are not supporting, and even when we are not sharing the views or values, it's the right of journalists to express his or her vision, feelings, emotions, present facts. When we see that the false is published, we usually publish, as we call, anti-fake material, sort of facts or information according to our point of view, which brings more facts or just bring facts to the situation. So yes, we are dealing with different journalists. We're dealing with those who are risking their lives just to get real facts. Those who are, we cannot say or name them like pro-Russians, but they are pro-fact. And we're dealing also with journalists who, for example, publish what you doing our best to present our position. We're doing our best to provide them with the materials. We're doing our best to organize, for example, not only press briefings or press conference or interviews in Moscow, but also to organize press tours to different regions, and we organize lots of them. And we're inviting not only those correspondents who are naming themselves as Russian friends, but we're also interested in inviting those who have this absolutely not pro-Russian views. Just because we do not want to judge them, we want them to see the truth. Yes, sometimes it's very hard, emotionally as well, to deal with them. Yes, sometimes you know that this is not journalism or journalistics, it's much more propaganda. Yes, sometimes you understand, and it's very hard to understand, that these materials are just pro-paid, they are just for money, not for truth or facts. But you have to move this direction, and you have to do your job, and your job not to judge and not to punish, but to explain to provide information and to struggle for the truth, but using legal frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. I would like to ask you about your evaluation on the success of Eastern Economic Forum. We have seen only one head of state coming to the event, Malaysian Prime Minister. At the same time, we have a Vice Premier of China and also a Deputy Prime Minister of Serbia. Eastern Economic Forum used to have many more heads of states coming and participating. How do you see the result of this year's forum? Is Russia more isolated? This is the evidence of Russia being isolated, or Russia have more friends to this forum? Thank you.
Excuse me, what media you present?
Yes, I'm from NHK, Japan.
Japan. How you're feeling your Japanese economy these days? You're happy with it? No, I'm kidding. I don't want to push you in this direction. Let me answer in Russian. Вы знаете, я советую вам не дискриминировать участников.
I wouldn't want you to discriminate amongst the representatives of the forum. You see, the success of the participants and the success of the forum is not measured by the status of the participants, but the numbers of participants and interested parties in the results and the results of trade turnover as a result. This is the success of an economic forum. It's not actually about the numbers and the status of guests, but the interest in economic projects, in clinching deals with Russian parties. You are from Japan yourself. Why are you placing yourself lower on the rank, in rank than other representatives of Asia or Pacific countries and other Western countries? You're here, and this is a success story as it is. Above all, well, you're asking whether Russia feels itself isolated or not. Well, from the point of view of economic results, has been isolated. We are analyzing the indicators of Japanese economic development and express our condolences. But you don't feel isolated. If you don't feel isolated, so how do we assess these factors of development in Japan? This wasn't what the Japanese government was aiming at, was it? Well, yes, there's been a huge attempt to isolate Russia, and currently what we see is Japan is not independent and is under the influence of Western countries. As far as our economic indicators are concerned, which are being related not only by Russian scientists and experts, but international experts as well, who provide statistic data, they point to the fact that this induced isolation has no success. Actually, it has brought to the growth of potential of Russia and the Far East. It has brought about the development of new markets. I understand that I'm causing you certain pain. I wouldn't have liked to do that, certainly, but I have to say this, that as far as Japan is concerned and the car, Japan has lost its market in Russia, and it wasn't Russia's undoing, so to say. It was Japan that was isolating Russia, but in its attempts to do so, Japan has caused itself harm. So you can share this with your auditorium, and maybe they would pose similar questions to you as far as why are we continuing to aim to isolate Russia, as Russia has economically gained and Japan has lost in this situation. I know that you have analysts amongst you who understand that the Russian market is highly important for the car industry in Japan, but it has not simply been lost for a medium period of time, but for a very long period of time, only due to the fact that there's been an attempt of Japan to gain scores with the US and other Western countries. So actually, don't try to cause and inflict pain on others. You will suffer yourself in these cases.
Наталья Лебедева, Федерал Пресс, Владивосток.
Natalia Lebedeva, Federal Press, Vladivostok. Well, there will be elections in the U.S. In the near future. What are the? How are you assessing the results? What are the expectations of our relations with this country? I understand what this question is connected with. Of course, we've been noting the zigzags of American democracy as of late, and everybody's really fed up with what is unfolding in Washington. But I would like to state our principal position. We do not interfere into elections, but whenever such elections occur, when we answer the question who you're supporting, who you're going to deal with, we once again, once and for all, we say that we will continue and resume and maintain relations with such political figures who are aiming at mutually beneficial, mutually effective relationships between our countries. We do understand that elections and the results of elections are the results of the will of the people of the country. So therefore, for us, it's highly interesting. Well, as for any other state, it is highly interesting and important to build relations on a mutually beneficial foundation under the international law. And whether they actually reflect what we want or not has no effect on the future situation. But, of course, especially now when everything that has been built by civilization after the war, and everything that has been created, everything positive has to remain. And it is important for politicians when they talk about the international situation. I would hope that they would start using more such words as peace, supporting peace, protection of peace, friendship, mutual respect. These words seem to have been lost along the way, and in the 20th century. We don't hear any of these words in programs, in international programs of development from politicians in different countries. It's as if people are afraid to pronounce them, but they are the basic foundation for the development of civilization, for the development of the world and the planet. So I would really want and like people to understand that, especially those who are politically inclined, who are participate in the political activities of their countries. They need to understand that so many mistakes within the past few decades have been made by Western countries, and a lot of basic notions are being avoided and disclaimed, but basic, as I say, principal tendencies for development have evaporated into thin air, as if people consider them outdated. Are looking for this narrative in the speeches of leading politicians, because other notions have already been taken into consideration, but these are the basic principles. Peaceful coexistence and friendship may sound idealistic to a certain extent, but ideals should remain ideals. They shouldn't simply be exclusive, but this and they are important for all. Peace and
the Eastern Time, Восточное время, Забайкальский край. I would like to ask a question about Mongolia. You know, being a very close neighbor, we are very much concerned about the development of Russia, and both Russia and the U.S. are promoting the development in Mongolia, development of the relations, and there's a strong pressure exerted on Mongolia, specifically in the financial sector. What do you think? Well, a lot has been said about Mongolia by the leader of our country and the leader of Mongolia. I wouldn't like to repeat what has been said. I think they were very clear in their statements. Reuters agency, Vladimir Soldatkin. Recently, we have heard a number of comments on the part of the MFA and the President of the Russian Federation that Russia is going to introduce changes into its nuclear doctrine. Could you kindly tell us what kind of changes are going to be introduced and whether this renewed document will be published? Well, you are referring to it as if, you know, it was already sent to print. Well, very detailed comments were provided by officials, by the Russian officials, the President of the Russian Federation and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And this work is based on the global and regional threats that are multiplying. Position of the West and the escalatory actions on the part of the U.S. and its partners in the NATO organization. We actually warned Western countries about the strategic risks that entail.
Эмоциями или чувствами, и они радикально сменят свой деструктивный курс. Так, с нами ли вот, да, пожалуйста, на заднем ряду.
Спасибо, Владимира. Стефано Ди Лоренцо, издание Global Bridge, Швейцария. Я сейчас слушаю внимательно.
As Russian friends, but we also interested in inviting those who have this absolutely not pro-Russian views. Just because we do not want to judge them, we want them to see the truth. Yes, sometimes it's very hard emotionally as well to deal with them. Yes, sometimes you know that this is not journalism or journalistics, it's much more propaganda. Yes, sometimes you understand, and it's very hard to understand that these materials are just pro-paid, they are just for money, not for truth or facts. But you have to move this direction, and you have to do your job, and your job not to judge and not to punish, but to explain, to provide information, and to struggle for the truth, but using legal frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. I would like to ask you about your evaluation on the success of Eastern Economic Forum. We have seen only one head of state coming to the event, Malaysian Prime Minister. At the same time, we have a Vice Premier of China and also a Deputy Prime Minister of Serbia. Eastern Economic Forum used to have many more heads of states coming and participating. How do you see the result of this year's forum? is Russia more isolated? This is the evidence of Russia being isolated, or Russia have more friends in this forum? Thank you.
Excuse me, what media you present?
Yes, I'm from NHK, Japan.
Japan. How you're feeling your Japanese economy these days? You're happy with it? No, I'm kidding. I don't want to push you in this direction. Let me answer in Russian. Вы знаете, я советую вам не дискриминировать участников.
I wouldn't want you to discriminate amongst the representatives of the forum. You see, the success of the participants and the success of the forum is not measured by the status of the participants, but the numbers of participants and interested parties in the results and the results of trade turnover as a result. This is the success of an economic forum. It's not actually about the numbers and the status of guests, but the interest in economic projects, in clinching deals with Russian parties. You are from Japan yourself. Why are you placing yourself lower on the rank, in rank than other representatives of Asia or Pacific countries and other Western countries? You're here, and this is a success story as it is. Above all, well, you're asking whether Russia feels itself isolated or not. Well, from the point of view of economic results, Japan has been isolated. We are analyzing the indicators of Japanese economic development and express our condolences. But you don't feel isolated. If you don't feel isolated, so how do we assess these factors of development in Japan? This wasn't what the Japanese government was aiming at, was it? Well, yes, there's been a huge attempt to isolate Russia, and currently, what we see is Japan is not independent and is under the influence of Western countries. As far as our economic indicators are concerned, which are being related not only by Russian scientists and experts, but international experts as well, who provide statistic data, they point to the fact that this induced isolation has no success. Actually, it has brought to the growth of potential of Russia and the Far East. It has brought about the development of new markets. I understand that I'm causing you certain pain. I wouldn't have liked to do that, certainly, but I have to say this, that as far as Japan is concerned and the car, Japan has lost its market in Russia, and it wasn't Russia's undoing, so to say. It was Japan that was isolating Russia, but in its attempts to do so, Japan has caused itself harm. So you can share this with your auditorium, and maybe they would pose similar questions to you as far as why are we continuing to aim to isolate Russia, as Russia has economically gained and Japan has lost in this situation. I know that you have analysts amongst you who understand that the Russian market is highly important for the car industry in Japan, but it has not simply been lost for a medium period of time, but for a very long period of time. only due to the fact that there's been an attempt of Japan to gain scores with the US and other Western countries. So actually, don't try to cause and inflict pain on others. You will suffer yourself in these cases.
Наталья Лебедева, Федерал Пресс, Владивосток.
Natalia Lebedeva, Federal Press, Vladivostok. Well, there will be elections in the U.S. In the near future. What are the? How are you assessing the results? What are the expectations of our relations with this country? I understand what this question is connected with. Of course, we've been noting the zigzags of American democracy as of late, and everybody's really fed up with what is unfolding in Washington. But I would like to state our principal position. We do not interfere into elections, but whenever such elections occur, when we answer the question who you're supporting, who you're going to deal with, we once again, once and for all, we say that we will continue and resume and maintain relations with such political figures who are aiming at mutually beneficial, mutually effective relationships between our countries. We do understand that elections and the results of elections are the results of the will of the people of the country. So therefore, for us, it's highly interesting. Well, as for any other state, it is highly interesting and important to build relations on a mutually beneficial foundation under the international law. And whether they actually reflect what we want or not has no effect on the future situation. But, of course, especially now when everything that has been built by civilization after the war, and everything that has been created, everything positive has to remain. And it is important for politicians when they talk about the international situation. I would hope that they would start using more such words as peace, supporting peace, protection of peace, friendship, mutual respect. These words seem to have been lost along the way, and in the 20th century. We don't hear any of these words in programs, in international programs of development from politicians in different countries. It's as if people are afraid to pronounce them, but they are the basic foundation for the development of civilization, for the development of the world and the planet. So I would really want and like people to understand that, especially those who are politically inclined, who are participate in the political activities of their countries. They need to understand that so many mistakes within the past few decades have been made by Western countries, and a lot of basic notions are being avoided and disclaimed. but basic, as I say, principal tendencies for development have evaporated into thin air, as if people consider them outdated. Are looking for this narrative in the speeches of leading politicians, because other notions have already been taken into consideration, but these are the basic principles. Peaceful coexistence and friendship may sound idealistic to a certain extent, but ideals should remain ideals. They shouldn't simply be exclusive, but this and they are important for all. Peace and
the Eastern Time, Восточное время, Забайкальский край. I would like to ask a question about Mongolia. You know, being a very close neighbor, we are very much concerned about the development of Russia, and both Russia and the U.S. are promoting the development in Mongolia, development of the relations, and there's a strong pressure exerted on Mongolia, specifically in the financial sector. What do you think? Well, a lot has been said about Mongolia by the leader of our country and the leader of Mongolia. I wouldn't like to repeat what has been said. I think they were very clear in their statements. Reuters agency, Vladimir Soldatkin. Recently, we have heard a number of comments on the part of the MFA and the President of the Russian Federation that Russia is going to introduce changes into its nuclear doctrine. Could you kindly tell us what kind of changes are going to be introduced and whether this renewed document will be published? Well, you are referring to it as if, you know, it was already sent to print. Well, very detailed comments were provided by officials, by the Russian officials, the President of the Russian Federation and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And this work is based on the global and regional threats that are multiplying position of the West and the escalatory actions on the part of the U.S. and its partners in the NATO organization. We actually warned Western countries about the strategic risks that entail. And we believe that, reason will dominate, however, and they will change their destructive course with time. Thank you, Stefano Di Lorenzo, Global Measures, Switzerland. I listened to you very attentively, and I have a feeling that in the current situation in Ukraine, only the West is to blame. And I asked myself whether Russia is ready to start negotiations with the Western countries, or these are just declarations and Russia continues to put a stake on the military victory. Well, I would like to apologize, but I'm sure that you your interest was not born in 2022. You know that Russia initiated the Minsk Accords back in the past, and then it called on all the parties involved to implement them. And that was happening for 7 years. You can actually start with 2014, open any statement of the President of the Russian Federation and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation on this situation. There will be large passages devoted to the existential necessity to implement the Minsk Accords. So what are you referring to? We are putting a stake on the use of force. The Chancellor Merkel and President Hollande testified. They publicly stated that they were not going to fulfill these Minsk agreements. Concurrently, at the same time, you know, they stockpiled weapons there in the Ukraine, and they carried out trainings and exercises, and they increased their attacks on Donbass. So the time had come then when, you know, the guns started to talk. And that was happening over 7 years. Well, I can actually argue with you. And I can actually, well, we can, I can bet that, you know, over the 7 years, these 7 years, you haven't sent any requests to the ministries or agencies of foreign affairs with the same question: why they didn't want to do anything to force the Ukrainian regime to implement the Minsk Accords. So everybody seemed to have then an illusion that it was not serious. And even back in 2022, in spring of 2022, when the special military operation was launched, we actually responded to the peaceful requests for peaceful negotiations, which were eventually blocked by the West. You are saying that the West is to blame for everything, in our view. But the West blocked all the opportunities of implementing these agreements. It was Boris Johnson first, you know, and then when negotiations were discontinued, and then the United States, you know, when Zelensky finally legally banned himself from holding any negotiations with the Russian Federation. And when we were out of options, even then we were ready to respond, to react positively. So that's how the reality looked like. As regards the declarative nature of the statements, I don't know, but in my view, you know, since Russia was the initiator of the first Minsk Accords, Minsk I Accords were worked out by Russia, and they were used as a basis for Minsk II agreements. And then they were initialized and signed by the Normandy format representatives, and that was the proof of our non-declarative nature of the statements we made and actions we undertook. We, you know, we worked to the very end to put to life our peaceful statements. And that was happening on millions of refugees flowing into our country from Ukraine. It's only recently, over the last 2 years, Europe has come to know what the massive inflow of Ukrainian refugees is. But at that time, we provided everything to those people who were seeking protection, either temporarily or forever. We actually provided them with kindergartens, schools, and housing. And I know it better than many other people because I visit my my relatives living near Moscow, and I see how these people who came from Ukraine back in 2014 live today. So that also refers to this question about these declarative statements. I'm not referring to 2022, it goes without saying, but we actually provided humanitarian assistance to the regions that were cut off from the Ukraine proper, I mean the Donbass territory. At that time, The Guardian said that we were supplying tanks, and we were sending these white-colored convoys of trucks, and we were providing medicines, you know, blankets, clothes, and The Guardian was then the first media outlet which actually said that we were supplying military equipment, and which was an absolute lie. And we were taking practical steps to provide help to the people. You know, we know what war is and what peace is, and we paid a huge price for the peace to be re-established. Therefore, I think I've overstepped my functional responsibilities, and being a citizen of my country and a daughter and a granddaughter to my parents, we want peace, we want friendship, but real peace, real friendship. And this statement is not of any declarative nature. There's maybe one more question, and I have to run, at least for the remaining part of the next plenary discussion. And those people who are online now, I will definitely separately respond to their questions. Stokma, the Ukrainian forces actually said that they are going to form a new series of brigades, and they said that these brigades are to be trained in Europe, and part of these brigades will be completed, staffed in Europe with those Ukrainians who are currently residing in the European countries. How do you respond to this? And, well, that they will be staffed by the Ukrainians who are currently living and staying in Europe. Well, that's something that they have been doing from the very beginning. They recruited citizens from other countries through Ukrainian embassies in violation of all the international agreements to that effect. They use their consulates generals and embassies in order to recruit people to fight. But we should be starting from something else. You know, this is a real fact, a fact of life, and our military are dealing with these facts on the ground. But we should start with saying that Ukrainian citizens, together with mercenaries from other countries, were trained in training camps and test grounds which were located in Poland and Baltic states before 2014. They have become the moving force of the so-called demonstrations called Maidan, and they were the center part of the Nazi battalions, including Azov and others that were active in Donbass and that were sent to the Crimea. And then measures were taken by the Crimean residents themselves. That's exactly where these processes started. And the West turned a blind eye on what was happening then. And they referred to those camps as the, you know, relaxation camps. I think the Europeans do not even understand what they are getting engaged in, what kind of plague they created by their own hands in the shape of the Kiev regime. And as you said, these battalions, new battalions, to be formed and recruited in the territory of the European countries from the Ukrainian citizens, I would like to say that this will definitely have a blowback on the West European countries as well. Just like any other terrorist groups started to operate in the countries that used to support them in the past, like ISIS, for instance, or take the Middle East. You know, I already quoted one of the leaders of the Persian Gulf countries, and they look at the European continent with a mixture of tragedy and comedy, you know, and well, he actually said that Europe has created a terror cell in itself. There were some outside examples like Afghanistan, for instance, but Europe has succeeded in creating a terrorist monster which is going to operate throughout the world, and you can see the statements of African countries. And this is a confirmation of this idea. So they are always coming back to those who created them. Thank you very much. I will definitely respond to all the questions you have individually. Thank you.